Hey everyone, Scott here to discuss Wonder Woman 1984, starring Gal Gadot, Chris Pine, Kristen Wiig, Pedro Pascal, Robin Wright, and Connie Nielsen, based on the graphic novel 1984 by George Orson and directed by Patty Jenkins. Now, I gotta say right off the top, I watched this thing 3 times thinking it would be spectacular. I was gonna go for four, but after my first viewing, oh, and I still can't believe I watched it 3 times. I think I should have stuck with twice myself because of, well, let's get into why. Diana Prince as a little girl goes to a tournament to the Amazons, and what was the point of this opening scene? After then to show some CGI, as Patty Jenkins says, that's from what I've heard, that this isn't CGI. I'm calling BS at this point because it looked so bad, and Diana gets a pep talk from Hippolyta, returned by Connie Nielsen, about doing her best during the tournament, and the effects in this sequence when they're moving from hole to hole and jumping on sticks looked absolutely cheap as Diana jumps in the water on sticks and goes on a horse. And this whole opening is shot with IMAX cameras. I'm sure it looks beautiful on IMAX, but I didn't like I didn't see it on IMAX because movie theaters around me are closed because of COVID. But seeing it at home on my 4K TV looked good. But again, I ask, what was the point of that opening? Diana slips off her horse and finds her way to get back to the horse, and she makes it back to the stadium. And Diana's mother, Antiope, I don't know if I'm saying that right, returned by Robin Wright, pulls her out of the tournament and doesn't win the tournament. And I must say, cut this scene out, as this is a 2.5 hour long movie. And the next sequence, which I'll talk about in a moment, also needs to be cut out as well. In 1984, Diana, as Wonder Woman, returned by Gal Gadot, saves people's lives and stops some robbers from running and robbing a jewelry store at the mall. As the robbers almost throws a little girl off the edge and stops the robbers, meanwhile, she throws a little girl on a teddy bear that's giant, like the size at Costco, for example, and says the most cringiest line in the movie. I hate guns. And throw the robbers on the police car, and she may be the best character in the movie, but my problem is her narration at the beginning, and all the mall sequences should be cut out of this movie because I'm thinking this first 20 minutes needs to be cut out of the movie as it takes too long, and it's been 67 years since she lost her lover in the First World War, and she's still not over him? How is she not over him? I mean, ugh, that drove me nuts. That bothered me so bad. Diana meets Barbara Minerva, played by Kristen Wiig, while wearing heels and working at the Smithsonian Museum. And my problem with this character is Kristen Wiig, she's miscast as the villainous Cheetah. And it's almost reminding me of Topher Grace being miscast in Venom as in Spider-Man 3. And the scenes with her and Diana are very uncomfortable. While we're why would you cast a comedian in a villain role? And that's the same problem I had with Spider-Man 3 as Topher Grace, who was on that 70s show and thought he was really funny as that main character, was the cast as the bad guy, and here it is, Kristen Wiig miscast as the Cheetah, who's a comedian in real life, as well as some dramatic parts, and it's making it's making the same mistakes as Spider-Man 3, and her character is awkward, and I don't like this character, just like I don't like Eddie Brock in Spider-Man 3 being portrayed by Topher Grace, and people say she's like the Michelle Pfeiffer Catwoman character, but she doesn't have the charisma Michelle Pfeiffer as that character, even though I didn't like Batman Returns. She wishes from the wish stone to be like Diana, and this is going to be the plot that doesn't make any sense later in the film. The next morning, she wakes up having the skills of Diana, and people look at her like she's attractive, like they didn't earlier in the film. And last time I'm gonna say this, she's miscast. Barbara meets with Maxwell Lord, played by Pedro Pascal, who I know as the Mandalorian in that Star Wars TV show on Disney Plus. And Diana finds out Max is having a partnership with Smithsonian, and they have a party on that night. And Max's partner Simon tells Max he's out of and he wants his money back and calls him a loser. And I didn't want to get into this while I'm reviewing this movie, but Max is like Donald Trump with blonde hair. As he's a businessman, later on he'll build a wall for a foreign country, which I'll get to later in the film. Then we get to this Smithsonian parties where Barbara gets all the guys looking at her, particularly Max, as he goes to Barbara's office to steal the wish stone. As someone follows Diana like he knows her, and as he turns out, he gives her the watch like Steve Trevor had, and he ends up being Steve Trevor, returned by Chris Pine. As in my first viewing, it didn't make much sense, but it took me till like when we got to the climax at the end, thinking it was her wishing to see him again. And we don't see the wish, which is for the best, I guess, because I don't want to see any more cuts of this movie than what I saw here. This bothered me for half the movie on my first viewing until we got near the climax, like I said. But my question is was Maxwell Lord the Wishmaster in the comic books? Please say something in the in the comments section, because I don't know what his deal is in this movie, as he wishes to be the Dreamstone. I know he's a Wonder Woman villain, but I don't know why he's the Wishmaster, like a genie, for example. Please mention that in the comments in the below. The next morning, Barbara wakes up realizing she has powers, starting with her refrigerator. Then she goes to the gym and she sees how strong and sees she's stronger than any other gym rat in the place. And she tells jokes while in the office, which is very poor acting by Kristen Wiig. Max gets Simon arrested because he wished for Simon to be arrested by the FBI, which was really a bad scene. Steve tries out clothes after clothes, and Diana finds a way to find the stone while Steve wears a fanny pack, which was probably a thing in the 1980s. And they go to the Smithsonian to track down the Dreamstone. Meanwhile, Max's company gets one phone call after another as he's helping his assistant Raquel, getting more people helping them out as her wish was, which doesn't make any sense. This plot is so weak. Diana and Steve break into Max's office and finds he was looking for the Dreamstone for the longest time, and they see he's going to Cairo, and the Smithsonian has an aircraft plane Diana and Steve can fly. When Diana and Steve get spotted on radar, and Diana turns on the aircraft plane, which is invisible, which I've heard that she can't turn planes invisible. I know, well, with her hands, but I know she'll eventually have an invisible jet, but doesn't create it by hands. And what makes matters worse is they fly into the fireworks of the 4th of July and doesn't get knocked down, which makes no freaking sense whatsoever. Barbara is at the police station as she sees everything on the Dreamstone and runs into her harasser from earlier in the film, and she beats him up as she almost kills him until her friendly homeless guy comes to the rescue, which is bad looking CGI when she kicks him far away and bad acting in the scene. In Cairo, Max gets a wish wish by the Egyptian Empire, and he builds a wall just like Donald Trump would do, and tells me this is offensive. Because why would you put today's politics in this movie? Especially one that's set in 1984. It's such a bad idea. Diana and Steve takes a cab to Cairo and steals it from the driver, and they pass Max Lord's guards And there's very little action in this movie, and we get an action scene that was very unspectacular, as we see Wonder Woman getting wounded by a few bullets, which is not something I remembered from the cartoons I watched as a kid. She flips a truck to get to Max as she asks him what happened to the stone, and he says, "You're looking at it." And this is when the movie stops making sense for me, and she saves some kids from playing on the street that almost get killed by the cars coming by them. And this is becoming nonsense at this point. Barbara dresses like a cheetah, but is not quite a cheetah yet. When she, Diana, and Steve sees the details about the Dreamstone and gets the monkey's paw, as if you wish for something, your powers drain unless you renounce your wish. And Barbara doesn't want to be a part of that, so she betrays Diana. Meanwhile, Max's son Alistair, who was introduced earlier in the film, wishes to be around his father, as Max wants something else for him, and he goes to the President of the United States of America. And is this supposed to be President Reagan? Because he looks nothing like him, to be fair. And things with the world go messy thanks to Max, as Diana and Steve talks about a hard decision of letting Steve go, but she can't, as she gives to her hidden office and finds a golden suit as she tells the story of Asteria, which confused the hell out of me on my first viewing. And they find Max going to the White House as Diana and Steve go get Max together, as he convinces the president to let Max go to the helicopter and give people more wishes, the power with nobody in their way whatsoever. And Diana gets Max as the Secret Service shoots them, but doesn't hit them, but she will eventually get wounded, even more than she did in that previous scene. As Barbara lets Max go, as she wants to be like an apex predator, which is what she'll wish after the fight. And the fight with Barbara versus Secret Servicemen and Wonder Woman, as she kicks their asses and lets Max go to the helicopter and joins Max, I should say, and this betrayal so she can get more what she wants doesn't make any damn sense. I'm infuriated with this movie at this point, as it's becoming a real disappointment. Steve tells Diana she has to let him go, and she renounces her wish and flies to where Max is, which doesn't make any sense either, because when can Wonder Woman fly? I've had lots of questions on all three viewings of this movie. And did she ever fly in the comic books with a yellow string? Please tell me something about that in the bottom with the comments, if she can fly, because I thought she couldn't, as the scene was laughable. It was so preposterous. Max and Barbara arrive at the broadcast signals so he can be on the live TV granting everyone's wishes, and this plot point is so stupid it makes no sense and turns Barbara into a real cheetah, and Alistair wishes he would come back to him, and Diana goes in the gold outfit of Asteria and fights some men off and fights Cheetah for at least 5 minutes. And this is the same problem with Venom in Spider-Man 3, where the real villain is barely in this movie, and the misunderstood villain confesses his problems. And I'll explain what I mean in a minute, but back to the Wonder Woman versus Cheetah fight. Cheetah goes through electric wire to electric wire with Diana, which looked rather silly, and the Cheetah design looked awful. As they get in the water, and Diana begs Cheetah to renounce her wish, and she says never, and Diana says, "Then I'm sorry," and gets electrocuted for a moment or two, as Diana goes to the misunderstood villain, which is Max. As he goes to the middle of the room and grants everyone's wishes, and she stops him by thinking about his son Alistair, while the Batman versus Superman score called A Beautiful Lie, toned differently, And I was so pissed when they brought that back. And why do you need to. And how do I know this? And why do I know this so well? Two reasons. One, I watched Batman vs. Superman fairly recently. And two, I have the score on my iPhone. And come on, can they think of anything original? And she tells everyone to renounce their wishes while on the air. Then he renounces his wish because of Alistair, as he tells Alistair he's not a good person, and that's how he was misunderstood, like the Sandman in Spider-Man 3. And this is much worse. It's Christmas time as Diana sees the guy that looked just like the transformation of Steve, but this time it's not Steve. As she flies to the next adventure, as credits roll during the credits scene where we see Asteria cameoed by Linda Carter, the original Wonder Woman from the TV show. And she saves a mother and her baby, which was the best scene in this whole movie, I must say, which is the Linda Carter cameo. But the climax is very weak, and the effects look absolutely awful. It's terrible, just honestly. Now it's finally time to get to the rating. I'll give this movie a 2.8 out of 10. This is now the worst DC Extended Universe movie I've seen, which did belong to Suicide Squad, but now it goes to this movie. The plot is so weak as the characters are so bad, but the biggest miscast is Kristen Wiig as the Cheetah. She's absolutely horrendous in this movie, and the effects looked awful. It was a terrible excuse to make these effects look so bad. The top DC Extended Universe movie was the first Wonder Woman, as this is on the very bottom of the list, in my opinion, which is a real shame because I came into this movie so optimistic, and it just disappointed me very badly. So I'm going to be quite frank with you. When the Suicide Squad and the Justice League Snyder Cut come out, I am so afraid. So afraid. Let me tell you why. Because I didn't like Justice League as much, and now they're coming out with The Suicide Squad, which another movie I didn't like on the first one. Just, oh my god. The more DC fails, the more I have a headache I have. So I'd like to thank you guys for joining me, and I will not be back for the Justice League Snyder Cut review, but I will be back for the Suicide Squad if it comes out in August. And until then, justice is served.